This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, 212th Trooper, Silas 1610, Carmen CJ, Rune Scribble, Kitsu the Kitsune, Blood Down, Papa Poto, and Team Valor, and brought to you by 212th Trooper who requested this topic. If there is a video you want me to make, just head over to Patreon or become a channel member. It's like the Pickled producer tier, since among other benefits, you'll get to make a video request every month, in the continuation of an existing series or a brand new story. Now before we get into today's story, I just want to ask you to do me a favor, hit that like button since it tells YouTube you enjoy what I do, and check whether you're subscribed, since only about a quarter of my viewers are. It's a free way to keep up to date with all my content. In return, I'll do all I can to keep making regular quality content for you. Thanks, and let's hop in. Jumping forward a few hours, the sun has begun to set on Island, bringing an end to Deku and Melissa's day of fun, though as they are both aware, this is not to be replaced with nothing, as now they have a night of dancing and fancy food ahead of them at the Expo's reception gala. Saying goodbye to each other as they head back to their respective hotel rooms, the pair make plans to meet up before the event, with the green-haired youth doing all in his power to look his best by showering, applying aftershave, and even trying to comb down his wild hair, though this latter endeavour is met by failure. Surprisingly, this is not the only hurdle Deku faces in this rather mundane task, as when he pulls on his suit jacket he is shocked to find how tight the arms and shoulders have become, a testament to the muscle mass he has steadily been gaining since acquiring his quirk. Luckily, he won't have to execute any of his hero moves tonight, so a bit of tightness is nothing to worry about, with the boy making his way down to the party early so he can meet up with his mum, Melissa, and David Shield. At first, it is a night out of a fairy tale, filled with music, laughter, and several speeches from pros such as Godzilla, who Deku had never known was such a skillful orator. However, this fairy tale is not meant to have its happily ever after, as higher in the tower, a group of armed criminals signal down to their allies that they have gained control of the island's security system at last. Taking this as his cue, the masked villain Wolfram along with half a dozen men sporting guns and body armor kick in the door of the gala, while making a rather bold declaration. Island is now under their control, and everyone on it is their hostage. In an attempt to prove this claim, Wolfram then has his tech guys activate the ballroom's inbuilt villain capture system, causing tendrils of blue energy to leap up and bind anyone in a hero costume, while the masked man himself makes his way through the crowd, explaining that he doesn't want to hurt any of them, he just wants one of the scientists here to come along and help him with a little matter. As he does, his eyes fall on David's assistant Samuel. Evidently fearing for his friend's safety, David steps up, revealing himself to be the leader of their lab, with this satisfying Wolfram, who orders his guards to take him along with the pretty blonde girl he'd been talking to in case the professor gets cold feet about helping them. At this, pure panic enters David's eyes as he attempts to protest, though it is already too late, as he is shoved roughly from the room, with Melissa likewise receiving some rather rough handling. As this happens, Deku prepares to step in, since as a kid in a suit, he had been exempt from the capture system, though as Melissa meets his eyes, she gently shakes her head, then flicks her gaze diagonally upwards before being marched out of the room as well. Following her stare to its destination, Deku has to fight not to smile, as his eyes fall upon an air vent, just large enough for someone small like him to fit through, and high enough that it is not guarded, since only someone with a wall-crawling quirk could even access it. Wildly thanking his friend for her brilliance under pressure, the green-haired hero begins weighing up his options. Since Wolfram had left too many of his goons here to prevent an open dash for the vent, this only leaves three choices: sneak his way in, take down the guards, or a combination of both. Choosing option 3, Deku ducks low, making his way through the crowd of crouching, cringing hostages as he approaches the guard nearest to the vent. While he would like to take them all down and free the heroes, that would take too long. And if these villains have access to Island's security system, that will include cameras, meaning they will notice if their hostages are released, and they might start using the civilians on the island as leverage to force the heroes' hands. Better to just take down one or two that won't be noticed, freeing him up to slip into the vent, since then he can rescue the shields, and hopefully make his way to the control room, freeing the pros and breaking the villain's grip. However, this plan comes with an unfortunate realization. His web shooters are back in the hotel room, and with no time for a detour, he'll have to do this without them, an added challenge that becomes immediately apparent as it would be child's play to web the gun away from the guard right in front of him. But instead, he is forced to bide his time, employing his spider sense to stay one step ahead of danger as he slips into not just this man's blind spot, but the blind spot of all his allies, before striking with the speed and precision of a spider, as with one hand, he shoves the muzzle of the gun towards the floor, while with the other he lands a punch strong enough to crack the man's helmet, as well as tear the sleeve from his jacket, before diving down to catch him mid-fall and land silently on the ground. Thankfully, this is quick and stealthy enough not to draw the attention of the other villains, though as the hostages look at him with awe, he whisperingly assures them that he's a hero in training, so he's going to save them, with the group huddling closer and promising to keep the knocked out guard out of sight while he's gone. With this resolved, the boy is finally able to scuttle his way up the wall and into the vent, with the faint clattering of the grate closing behind him being the only sign that he was ever there to begin with. Placing his fingers against the smooth metal, Deku is effortlessly able to shimmy his way through the vents, and while he doesn't know where he's going, he's pretty sure up is the best direction, choosing to climb whenever the opportunity presents itself. As he does, he keeps his eyes and ears peeled for any sign of danger, and while no one seems to notice him, he does hear something interesting a few floors up, the sound of explosive battling. Literally explosive, as the familiar sound of Bakugo's detonations ring through one of the atriums, as he cacklingly demands that these extras give him a real challenge. Though Deku doesn't know how his blonde rival got past the security protocols, it stands to reason that he'd be just as driven to stop the villains, and so leaving whoever he's facing in his hands, he continues to climb until he spots a grate in the distance large enough to fit through. As is on the vent floor, the exit requires something of a tumble, with his lack of webs once again being an issue, as without them to stabilize himself, he falls end over end and lands rather hard on something that breaks under his weight, expelling what feels like a liquid or gel. Looking around in panic, the green-haired youth finds himself in what appears to be a vault filled with several sealed crates, each bearing a warning label and copious amounts of red tape, with his eyes finally falling on the box he landed on, which had contained a glass canister of some thick black fluid that has begun to soak into his pants and jacket. Leaping up in an attempt not to make things worse, Deku attempts to wring his clothes out, though it is already too late, as not only is it refusing to go, but the sticky substance is thickening and spreading, as now even the stuff touching the soles of his shoes have begun slithering up his legs as if he were a sponge drawing in more and more of it. For a moment, panic begins to grip him as he fears what this goo could be, though as he spots a torn label from the broken box, he recognizes a word: Venom. As if sensing his understanding and lack of resistance, the black mass speeds up its spread, so that a heartbeat later Deku feels it cover his entire body, though now it is no longer sticky, instead settling into a comfortable, flexible hero suit. Turning to stare at himself in the reflective metal of the vault door, the young hero is shocked to see how closely Project Venom managed to recreate his costume, albeit in black and white, with this being a testament to the seamless integration David had spoken of, as it must have picked up on his brainwaves and manifested that mental image of a hero costume into reality. Curious to see what else it can do, Deku throws a simple punch into the air, with the speed and strength of even this low-effort jab being greater than anything he's ever been able to produce before. At this sight, his confidence swells, as he is certain he'll be able to defeat Wolfram and his villains now, with the black-clad hero wasting no time pulling the vault door from its hinges, as he begins descending the stairs in the direction he heard Bakugo fighting, as hopefully the other boy left something for him. Due to the emergency stairs being one of the only ways to traverse the building while in lockdown, it does not take long for the two parties to cross paths, with Deku letting out a sigh when he sees that David and Melissa are unharmed, though in contrast, the bearded scientist looks troubled as he surveys the boy in black. Spotting this apprehension, Wolfram demands to know what his goddamn problem is, with David hesitantly admitting that Project Venom is designed to bond deeply with its host in order to enhance them and their quirk factor, so removing it from an embedded host will be significantly more challenging and time-consuming than retrieving it from the sealed vault. This only earns a blunt hiss from the masked villain, as he grunts that in that case they'll just take the boy with them, though when David tries to protest this was never part of the deal, he is forcibly silenced, as a rifle butt is slammed into the back of his head. Such needless cruelty makes Deku see red, that before even he knows it, he is on top of the gunman, slamming an elbow into his face that entirely shatters his mask, along with every tooth in his head, before springing into another for a flying kick that embeds him into the concrete wall as if it were putty. Now all that remains is Wolfram himself, though as Deku prepares to make his third and final strike, the click of a handgun stops him, as the villain smirkingly lays his pistol against Melissa's head, during the hero kid's fast, but a bullet's faster. So why doesn't he come nice and quiet, so they don't have to mop this girl's brains off 3 flights of stairs? Gritting his teeth, the young spider hero raises his hands in surrender, with Wolfram flicking his chin in a wordless order to start marching while he and Melissa bring up the rear. Knowing that he's in no position to resist, not when his friend is in danger, Deku complies, with Wolfram leaving his downed men and David as he barks at the boy to keep going till he reaches the roof, where a couple of friends will be waiting for them. As promised, when he emerges onto the roof, a helicopter manned by more masked men is waiting, with a few of them asking Wolfram who this kid is. Though grunting that there's been a change of plan, the masked villain orders them to load Deku onto the chopper, since they'll work on getting the payday off him once they're back at their hideout. However, as Wolfram will soon learn, there has been yet another change in plan, and his name is Katsuki Bakugo, as before Deku and Melissa can board the aircraft, an ear-splitting explosion rings out from below them, as Bakugo quite literally bursts onto the scene, while roaring that he told these piece of shit scrubs they couldn't run from him forever. Naturally, this draws the criminal's fire, with even Wolfram turning his gun on Bakugo, and seeing her chance, Melissa frees herself, driving the point of her heel into the masked man's foot, then making a break for it as he howls in pain. However, Wolfram has one last trick up his sleeve. As extending a palm, he activates his metal manipulation quirk, grabbing Melissa painfully by the metal in her jewelry, and thrusting her back with a cackle that she won't get away from him that easily. Or at least, he manages to get out roughly 2/3 of that sentence. As having likewise not been idle, Deku uses this opening to sock him in the jaw, shattering it completely so that it almost comes off, with both of them tumbling to the ground in a pile. Unfortunately, there is one problem with that. Wolfram is now in no position to stop Melissa's flight, and instead now serves as a tripping hazard, as when she collides with him and Deku, she is knocked head over heels and plunges over the side of the building. At once, time stands still, as when Deku stares down in horror at her falling form, he does not see her. He sees All Might, he sees Ida, and as pure instinct drives him to dive after her, only one thought rings in his head: not again. By the time he has come to his senses, he is already in freefall, with his spider sense screaming at him that very soon he will reach terminal velocity, and then soon after, he will die, being briefly preceded by Melissa as they both become smears on the pavement. If only he had his web shooters, he could save them both, and as if in some vain attempt to manifest them, he extends his arm and strikes the firing pose. And then, webs appear. Dark, sticky ones unlike the fluid Melissa had made for him, but webs nonetheless, with the first thread launching out to affix itself to Melissa's stomach, and knowing he's rapidly running out of time, he does the same with his other hand, latching onto a nearby window and bringing them both to a stop with a sharp jerk. A jerk that seems to hit Melissa much harder, as her whole body seems to snap to a halt, while her head lolls at an odd angle. Heart hammering in his chest, Deku instinctively retracts the web holding her so he can inspect her more closely, with the outlook not being good, as her body remains limp while her eyes are glassy. No, this can't be happening. Not again! And in fact, it isn't, as with a start, Melissa's head turns to look at him, a smile forming on her face, as she breathes that he did it. At first, Deku can hardly believe it, having feared the worst, that somehow Project Venom must have not only produced the webs, but modulated their launch velocity to only give her whiplash rather than break her neck. Truly, this suit is incredible. Making sure not to jostle her any further, Deku gently repels his way back to the roof, where he is pleased to see that Bakugo has subdued the villains including Wolfram, while Kirishima, who must have been with him, helps a bruised and groggy David shield onto the landing, with him immediately running to embrace his daughter. Smiling softly, Deku does not interject, though when the pair break apart, he turns the wide eyes of his new suit upon the man, as he asks what was the deal he was talking about with Wolfram. Seeing no point in hiding it now, David slumps as he sighs that the boy has probably guessed it by now, but he is wearing Project Venom, which he hired Wolfram and his group to help steal back for him, since he truly believes he can do more good in use than locked up in some vault. And he was right, wasn't he? Since without it, Deku couldn't have saved himself and Melissa. Sighing deeply, the green-haired hero confesses that he sees David's point, but he also endangered a lot of people with this stunt, so that can't be forgotten just because everything resolved itself happily this time. Worriedly, Melissa asks what her friend is going to do, and seeing the pure terror in her eyes, he knows his answer, since he's covered up greater wrongs for worse people, so he won't tear a family apart over this, since that wouldn't be the justice All Might and Tsukuichi taught him to uphold. However, as he is quick to inform the shields, he's also keeping the suit, since if David's motive truly was to get it back so it could help people, then he should have no objection leaving it in his hands. Smiling with relief, the bearded scientist nods that he has none at all, since his original hope was to entrust it to All Might, so he would be honored to see his work help the young man he trained and trusted with his hope. Understandably, the Eye Expo comes to a premature end in the wake of this villain attack, with the UA students all bidding the island goodbye, that is aside from Melissa, who decides to stay with her dad for the rest of the summer break, wishing Deku and his classmates luck in their summer training camp, and they'll need it, as when they arrive in the forested area run by the Wild Pussycats, they and Mr. Aizawa are quick to put the students through their paces, giving each an individualized stress test to push their quirks past their limits. There is one problem with that though. Deku's new suit has already boosted his abilities far beyond what Aizawa had observed during the final exams, meaning all of his training programs are functionally worthless, since even when he draws the suit back inside himself, it's still bonded to him, and can't really be removed, forcing the exhausted teacher to go back to the drawing board for his new problem child and superstar rolled into one. And speaking of problem children, during this time the group do also meet Koda, with the latter still attempting to punch Deku in the crotch for being a corny fake hero, Deku, though here his spider senses kick in, allowing him to avoid it, though with it comes another impulse, a stranger one, as for a second he is tempted to strike back and put this kid in his place like he initially wanted to with Bakugo when he first gained his powers. Though, thankfully, this fades after a microsecond, with the green-haired hero putting this down to fatigue, since he's been really tired ever since coming back from High Island. Nonetheless, since he has time on his hands, he mostly uses it to assist his classmates, and while some like Bakugo threaten to fire an explosion where the sun don't shine if he dares try to chew to him, others like Uraraka and Aoyama are quick to accept his help, while Shinzo in particular shows a surprisingly reserved gratitude for any assistance, feeling that he is already behind, so anything he can do to catch up would mean the world to him. Through this time, Deku gets a chance to know the purple-haired boy a little better, discovering not only his speech-based quirk, but also his insecurities around how the world sees it as a villainous quirk. And having grown up with enough insecurities of his own as part of the quirkless minority, he is quick to bring him into the fold of his friendship group, figuring he could use some friends as a few of their classmates still hold him taking Ida's spot against him, despite the fact that Ida himself would almost certainly want them to work hard at making Shinso feel welcome. Subsequently, when evening falls and they get the assignment to make their own dinner, Deku as Shinso join him, Uraraka, and Aoyama at their fire, with the four of them making curry and sharing some laughs late into the night, before turning in as no doubt tomorrow will be yet another challenging day. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the forest, a young man with pale blue hair and a mask made from severed hand waits for his new compatriots. Up until now, he and his organization had laid low, biding their time, though now at last his mentor has seen fit to grant him permission to step into the light and unleash terror upon hero society. Due to their comparative obscurity and the continued activities of the hero killer, who remains the rallying point for villains around the country, Tomura Shigaraki knows that he needs to go big right off the bat, and where better to strike than the heart of the hero's precious future, UA. Specifically, their little heroes in training, as presently he has his eyes on one of them to join his ranks, while his master had ordered him to pick up another one for a mutual ally. And though Tomura doesn't appreciate being treated like a delivery boy, his master's never been wrong before, so he'll do as he's told. It is around this time that his allies arrive, the scant few who Gurren had managed to acquire from him before Stain's little cult had poached them like every other viable villain these days, with his motley crew therefore being made up of himself, Kurogiri, a wannabe stage magician who goes by Mr. Compress, some lady named Magne, a roided out brute calling himself Muscular, a couple of masked freaks named Mustard, Moonfish, and Twice, and the weirdest member of his little menagerie, though also his most powerful, a brooding emo who's more skin graft than man, and who goes by the alias Darby. Now that they're all together, Shigaraki welcomes them with a disconcerting grin, earning mixed reactions from his followers, as Moonfish and Muscular are twitchy and eager to get started, Compress and Mustard are in favor of restraint, and Twice seems to flip between both, often contradicting himself. As for the others, they mostly stay quiet and listen to what the new boss has to say, with Shigaraki assuring them they will strike, and when they do, it will make a mark on hero society that they'll never forget. Though, they must wait just a little bit longer, as the time for his plan has not yet arrived. And so it is that another day of training passes, with Deku's presence as an informal assistant teacher being distinctly helpful, as he and the other students begin noticing there are just barely enough teachers to attend to all of them, with even Deku only putting them marginally above the bare minimum. When questioned on this, Aizawa and the Pussycats are quick to dismiss it. Though being shrewd, Deku has a feeling there might be something they're not being told, almost like they've been specifically isolated to serve as an exact sample without any additional variances, though a sample of what he does not know. That evening, once they have had their dinner, the kids are informed they'll be doing a specialized night training in the form of a test of courage, as they must make it through the forest in pairs, while the other first-year class attempts to scare them off, with the game going to whichever class can scare the most of their peers. Though, as they will soon learn, this is far more than a game, as it is at this point that the League of Villains choose to strike, descending into the forest while the heroes in training are split up, or using Mustard's gas quirk to create a fence keeping the teachers out and the students in while his comrades strike. As soon as this begins, Deku's spider sense goes crazy, to the point where if he had not been training it since the sports festival, he probably would have blacked out again. Even so, it takes a steadying hand from Shinso, who is his assigned partner, to keep him from stumbling, with the purple-haired youth questioning what's wrong. Brow furrowing, Deku admits that he doesn't think they're playing a game anymore, with this hunch being proven right as out of the darkness springs Moonfish, his bladed teeth already extending to slash the boys to ribbons. At once, the two heroes leap into action, with Deku manifesting his suit and summoning more of those organic webs to swing out of harm's way, while Shinso rolls to the side and yells out to Moonfish, who he addresses only as, "Hey ugly," Instinctively, the villain grunts in response, though this is all Shinso needs, as it's enough to trigger brainwashing, with the purple-haired boy capitalizing as he gives him the command to freeze. In an instant, Moonfish's rampage halts, as though he is physically unable to continue, and seeing the opening his new friend has bought him, Deku dives in for a punch that shatters the blades into splinters, while leaving the masked man unconscious on the forest floor. Beaming proudly, Deku thanks Shinso for the assist, with the other boy simply giving a nod as he states they should find the others and warn them, since if there's one villain here, there could be multiple. As they go, Deku expresses particular worry about Kota, since he's just a kid even if he does have a rotten attitude, though unfortunately, due to not seeking him out the previous night due to having had too much fun with friends new and old, he does not know where to begin looking, and so can only hope he's okay. However, perhaps he should be more worried for himself, as out of the darkness strides the patchwork man Darby, along with Mr. Compress, with the pair grinning that luck really is on their side tonight, since they'd have thought they'd have to track these two down separately. Like with Moonfish, Shinso attempts to bait them into explaining themselves so he can put them under brainwashing. Though, raising a finger, Compress addresses Darby, reminding him not to fall for that trick, while the mottled man impatiently scowls at the magician to get off his case, since he remembers that tip from this morning. As these statements have been directed at each other and not Shinso, the boy's quirk does not activate, though that does not mean they are powerless, as swinging into action Deku prepares to take down these two like he did Moonfish, though it seems it will not be so easy, as when Darby unleashes a gout of blue flame, Deku's body moves on its own, desperately swinging out of the way as stress hormones flood his body. Never in his life has he experienced terror quite like this, with the fear being so all-consuming that he cannot even register his spider sense as it warns him of an oncoming tree until he smashes into it. Worriedly, Shinso calls out Deku's name, though this momentary distraction leaves him vulnerable to a follow-up attack from Mr. Compress, who closes the distance and gently lays a hand upon him, so that in a flash, the boy is gone and a marble is in his place. At this sight, fury rises in Deku to burn away the panic, as he bellows at the villain to return his friend. Though having no interest in prattle, Darby barks him to shut up, while firing another burst of blue flame the boy instinctively avoids. Something in this sloppy, panicked response causes Darby to raise one of his thin eyebrows, as he muses that he thinks someone's afraid of fire. Not that he can blame the kid, since there's no pain worse than getting burned. Take it from him. With these words come another flurry of flames, and another, as Deku is forced to hop around like a crazed animal barely in control of his own body. This must be one of Project Venom's inbuilt security measures, though in that moment, the boy can barely think of that or anything else, as the raw adrenaline filling his system has him deeply buried in fight or flight. At first, he chooses flight, though it seems this is the wrong answer in Darby's eyes, as when Deku attempts to flee the clearing, the scarred man unleashes a ring of flame that traps the two of them and compress inside, while leering that UA students really aren't all they're cracked up to be. Though this is perhaps not the wisest of taunts, as with flight out of the picture, Deku's nervous system sees only one path. Fight, yes. Fight and kill. Since if he tears this guy's head from his shoulders, his quirk might end, and he will be free of this horrible fire. Yes, that's it. Just kill him! Before he knows it, Deku is on the attack, his legs spring without command, while his arm is outstretched like a beast claw, ready to tear Darby to shreds. Such is his savagery that for a moment even the villain looks startled. Though before the blow can land, Mr. Compress steps between them, and as his fingers touch the young hero's chest, oblivion claims him. And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.